Jacob and Rachel's longing. Jacob and Rachel had yearned for a child for many years. Each evening, they knelt together under the starry sky, placing their unwavering faith in God, hoping that one day their prayers would be answered. Rachel, who longed to experience the joy of motherhood, often watched the children in the village play with a deep ache in her heart. Yet, she never gave up her faith. "Jacob," she said one day, "God will give us a gift, if not now, then soon." When Joseph was born, their home filled with joy and light. Jacob could not hide his overwhelming emotions. He held the tiny baby boy in his arms, staring into his bright, innocent eyes that seemed to reflect heaven's joy. Rachel smiled, her face wet with tears. "God has heard our prayers," she whispered. To them, Joseph was more than just a child. He was the embodiment of faith and hope. Jacob's love for Joseph was unparalleled. He showed favoritism toward him, not only because he was the son of his beloved wife, but also because Jacob sensed something extraordinary about the boy. As Joseph grew older, Jacob gifted him a richly ornamented coat, a gesture that symbolized the depth of his affection. This coat was not merely a piece of fabric. It was a father's heart woven into colors. While Jacob basked in the joy of Joseph, his 10 older brothers simmered in silent jealousy. Their gazes toward Joseph's vibrant coat were not of admiration but of bitterness. "Father always favors him." Reuben, the eldest, whispered to Simeon as they toiled in the fields. "What are we in his eyes? Nothing more than laborers?" The jealousy was not merely about the coat. It was about the way Jacob protected Joseph, shielding him from the harsh work that his brothers endured daily under the burning sun. The whispers turned into murmurs, and the murmurs into loud complaints. "Who does he think he is?" Judah snarled, his voice laced with anger. "We are his brothers, yet we're treated like his shadows." At 17, Joseph began having vivid dreams he believed were messages from God. One night, he dreamed of him and his brothers binding sheaves of grain in the field. His sheaf stood upright, while theirs bowed down to it. Awaking with excitement, he eagerly shared his dream with his brothers. Instead of sharing his enthusiasm, they grew angrier. "Do you think you're better than us?" Judah spat. "Will we bow to you? Don't flatter yourself." Their resentment only deepened when Joseph recounted another dream. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing before him. Even Jacob, who adored Joseph, advised him to tread carefully. "Be mindful of your words, my son," Jacob said, though his curious gaze betrayed an inner wonder. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were grazing their sheep far from home. Unbeknownst to Joseph, this journey would change his life forever. Seeing him approach from a distance, the brothers' jealousy turned to rage. "Look," Simeon sneered, "the dreamer is coming." They began plotting. Judah, consumed by anger, proposed an extreme solution. "Let's end this now," he said, his eyes burning with hatred. Reuben, however, hesitated, though he shared their jealousy. His heart couldn't condone such a crime. "Don't kill him," Reuben interjected. "Throw him into that empty cistern instead. We'll decide what to do later." Secretly, Reuben planned to rescue Joseph and return him to their father. When Joseph arrived, the brothers tore the ornate coat from his shoulders. Shocked and terrified, Joseph pleaded, "Why are you doing this?" But his cries were drowned out by their cold laughter as they threw him into the dark, empty cistern. Lying in the pit, Joseph's heart pounded with fear. "Why is this happening? God," he whispered. Meanwhile, the brothers sat nearby, discussing their next move. A caravan of Ishmaelite traders appeared in the distance, and Judah had an idea. "We don't need to kill him," he said. "Let's sell him as a slave. That way, we rid ourselves of him without shedding blood." For 20 pieces of silver, they sold Joseph to the traders. As he was bound and led away, Joseph looked back at his brothers, his eyes brimming with despair, but none of them looked back. To cover their betrayal, the brothers dipped Joseph's coat in goat's blood and brought it to Jacob. "Father, we found this," they said, feigning sorrow. Seeing the bloodied coat, Jacob collapsed in grief. "My son, Joseph," he cried, tears streaming down his face. Believing his beloved child had been killed by wild animals, Jacob plunged into mourning. Days turned into weeks, yet the pain of his loss never lessened. Meanwhile, Joseph, now a slave, was taken to Egypt. Though he had lost his home and family, God's plan for him was far from over. Arriving in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, a high-ranking official in Pharaoh's court. Though enslaved, Joseph's faith remained unshaken. "God is still with me," he reminded himself each day. His diligence and integrity soon caught Potiphar's attention. Entrusting Joseph with increasing responsibilities, Potiphar eventually placed him in charge of his entire household. But Joseph's trials were far from over. Potiphar's wife, enamored by his appearance and demeanor, became fixated on him. How can a slave possess such grace? She wondered. Consumed by her obsession, she attempted to seduce him, but Joseph refused her advances. His rejection turned her admiration into fury, and she falsely accused him of assault. Potiphar, though conflicted, had Joseph imprisoned. In the dark confines of the Egyptian prison, Joseph's faith was once again tested. Yet, even there, God's presence was evident. The prison warden, impressed by Joseph's character, entrusted him with managing the other prisoners. Joseph offered them kindness and counsel, holding on to the hope that God had not abandoned him. Two notable prisoners, Pharaoh's chief cupbearer and chief baker, arrived at the prison, troubled by strange dreams. They confided in Joseph. Joseph, through God's guidance, interpreted their dreams accurately. The cupbearer would be restored to his position, while the baker would be executed. His interpretations proved true, but the cupbearer forgot about Joseph until 2 years later. When Pharaoh himself was troubled by dreams, Joseph was summoned to interpret Pharaoh's dreams, revealing that Egypt would experience 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. Impressed by his wisdom, Pharaoh appointed Joseph as second in command, tasking him with overseeing Egypt's preparations for the famine. When famine struck, Jacob's family in Canaan suffered greatly. Hearing of Egypt's grain stores, Jacob sent his sons to buy food. When Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them instantly, though they did not recognize him. Suppressing his emotions, Joseph tested their hearts by accusing them of being spies. He demanded they bring their youngest brother, Benjamin, to prove their honesty. Back in Canaan, Jacob reluctantly allowed Benjamin to go. When Joseph saw Benjamin, his heart swelled with emotion. After further testing his brother's loyalty, Joseph revealed his identity. "I am Joseph, your brother," he exclaimed, overwhelmed with guilt and joy. The brothers embraced him. Joseph urged his brothers to bring their family to Egypt. Upon reuniting, Jacob and Joseph embraced, their tears mingling with relief and gratitude. Pharaoh welcomed Jacob's family warmly, granting them land and security. Together, they flourished, their fractured bonds restored through forgiveness. Joseph's story became a timeless testament to resilience, divine providence, and the transformative power of forgiveness.